Let's hear some questions before Pepper comes up with Johnita.
It's interesting to hear that the new order requires relationships.
Yes.
At the same time, we are having people talk to each other at the table by text.
Yes.
How do we get those two seemingly contradictory things to?
Well, it's a simplistic answer, but I think texting is also a form of relationship. I think kids today have relationships that are more abundant, though less deep. And that's their world. That's the way they interact with their friends. That's the way they get their information. We wouldn't want to be that way, and we have preferences and even values that say that's not it. But frankly, of the young people that I see, those who are in those they're related, but they're relating in a very much different way than we are. They're relating all the time, continuously, with each other, but through that medium, not through face-to-face communication. And frankly, the telephone was that for us. People at home, we couldn't go out, we couldn't drive, so we were on the phone with all of our friends all the time. So this is just, I think a new version of that. Now, there are dangers being on the internet, obviously. One of the things my wife tells me is that internet bullying, I mean, everything that is in the physical world gets replicated in the internet world. So just as though there's bullying in school, there's now bullying on the internet. It's all just replicated. So the relationships in school, then I think there's also relationships. Yes, please.
You have the lower class, middle class, upper class.
Yep.
You see a spread there. So how do we exist as humans and not have chaos?
The answer is how we not have chaos. Now, the question was how we not have chaos. But okay, there have always been social classes. So just because there are social classes doesn't mean that we don't have chaos. One of them, and of course the office jobs and the factory jobs, the ones that are being squeezed are middle class jobs. They're jobs that many of us were benefited. We grew up in families like this. And so they're the ones who get squeezed. The problem is that, and there have been societies, most societies as a matter of fact, did not have a middle class. The middle class is the creation of this particular form of economy, society, capitalism, industrialism, whatever. The difference is that now we are also a democracy. And what happens if people, and in democracy, in the economics of a democracy, we have to believe that we're getting a fair shot. We have to believe that the game is not rigged, that certain people don't have advantages. Well, because of the inherent problem, not the problem, the inherent dynamics of the economy, the ownership, the upper class, is benefiting from globalization and technological improvement. And the middle class, in my estimation, is benefiting because we're getting cheaper products, but we're not having the kind of meaningful work and the kind of life-sustaining families and incomes that we were benefiting from as young people. So if a large enough proportion of the society says, wait a minute, this isn't fair, and this happened once before, didn't it? 1890s, the Gilded Age. And what happened? Teddy Roosevelt, the progressive, said, we should not have 12-year-old children working 6 days a week in cotton mills. We shouldn't have people dying ordinarily in slaughterhouses, meatpacking plants. We shouldn't have owners being able to hire the Pinkertons, their own private police force, and shoot people who were striking. I mean, those were not common, but they were all over the place right around the turn of the century. And the people more or less said, enough is enough. We want a society that is more humane, that takes care of people better than that. We're not anywhere near that yet. But if it were to become too unequal, then I believe that the democratic process will begin to take over, and we will begin to turn the ship towards some kind of a solution. I don't know what it is. Some kind of a solution that makes the prosperity more equitable throughout the society. And it's, so I'm not saying we're at the 1890s, but that since the 1980s, that is the direction it's been going, because that's where the inequality has grown. So I don't think we're at a point of chaos, but we are at a point of squeezing. And I think that's part of what this debate, we're having in this election is about. Which is the formula to get out of the squeezing? And of course, they have different. So, yes, sir, please.
How do you get schools and educators to change the law, and are they changing the law? How do you get from the lighting kids at the rows and gas like leader law to the new model, the problem-solving model, and improve the problem of the roofs, and how do you get them to change and when will they change?
There are two ways that transformational change occurs: before the crisis or after the crisis. Before the crisis, it's called leadership. So in future studies, leaders are those who promote the movement from one era to the other. So we're in a particular, we're certainly in an educational era, and we are still believing that we're in the industrial era. But leaders will say, wait a minute, we're not in that industrial era anymore, and schools are even less so, because they're training people to be industrial workers, not 21st century workers. So is there someone who can come along and make that case and rally enough support in the political and private sector to get people to actually pressure the school system to figure out how to make that happen? I haven't seen them. I don't know who they are. What will be the crisis? I think it could be that there was an educational crisis in 1957. There was a little round ball called Sputnik. And I don't know how many remember, but there was a huge, massive response, and to the country's credit, it was centered fundamentally on education and science and technology. Prior to that, college was for the elite. After that, other than the GI Bill, it was called the National Defense Education Act, opened up colleges, and all of the growth of higher education happened as a result of that one event. So what is the event that is going to show us that we are not preparing the next generation for competition in that economy? I don't know what that is. After that crisis, then it's called recovery. And you need leaders there too, but it's a different kind of a thing. It's either before the bankruptcy or after the bankruptcy, and there are people who are experts at cleaning up messes in companies and even reviving companies after bankruptcies. But I don't think any of us want to go through that. So what do we do ahead of time? Frankly, I've been expecting it for decades, and I fundamentally don't know. That system, the educational system, is so resistant to change. It has huge inertia. Much more inertia than any business, much more inertia than many of the government agencies and the nonprofits we talk about. They are just charging down the road. And frankly, because they're being supported also by students and parents and voters and taxpayers who want the same education system that they had. It was good enough for them, it's good enough for and so that kind of thinking. So who is out there? Where's the wedge? There has to be dissatisfaction for change to happen, for leaders to use. And there has to be some testable solution that actually confers greater benefit.